Well, Bob and Happy Gilmore and Bob are they're in a pro-am together, and it turns out that Bob Barker's taking the game a little too serious and getting on Happy Gilmore's nerves, and then this happens. So I don't know. Let's look at it, eh?
For nearly 30 years, Happy Gilmore has been the loudest, wildest golf movie ever made. But there's a layer you've never noticed. Hidden behind the flying fists, broken clubs, and Bob Barker beatdowns are gags, glitches, and inside jokes that slipped right past audiences. Until now. Adam Sandler just pulled back the curtain on what really happened behind the scenes. And once you hear what was never meant to make the final cut, you'll never watch it the same way again. From background chaos to a very expensive mistake, there's one detail in particular that fans missed completely. The one-liner that slipped in. Ask anyone to quote Happy Gilmore, and odds are the first thing out of their mouth will be, "The price is wrong." It's crude, it's unexpected, and it's unforgettable. A line that somehow perfectly captures the film's chaotic, juvenile energy. But what most fans don't realize is that this now iconic moment wasn't even in the original script. According to Adam Sandler, the line was a spontaneous ad-lib that happened while filming the infamous golf course brawl with legendary Price is Right host Bob Barker. It was meant to be a one-off joke between takes, something to break the tension and get the crew laughing. It worked, almost too well. As the cameras rolled, Sandler threw out the line on instinct, not expecting it to make it into the final cut. The set erupted in laughter. Cast, crew, and even Barker himself couldn't hold it together. Everyone assumed the line would be cut, either by the studio or the ratings board, for being too vulgar or too ridiculous. But when test audiences saw the scene with the insult intact, they howled with laughter. It was raw, unpolished, and utterly hilarious. Against all odds, the line stayed, and it quickly became one of the most quoted moments in 1990s comedy. Bob Barker's answer to the line was even more shocking than one would expect it to be. Instead of getting insulted, he just took it. In fact, he asked for a second take so that he could do it tougher on Sandler, according to some reports. Barker, according to Sandler, was very much into the slapstick energy of the scene and really saw it as an opportunity to reinvent his earlier straight-laced television image. He did not want to be only the guy from The Price is Right, was the message of Sandler as taken from the interview. He wanted to throw a punch, and he did. What made the moment even more remarkable was how it bridged two very different entertainment worlds. Bob Barker, long known for his calm, grandfatherly demeanor on daytime TV, collided head-on with the reckless absurdity of Sandler's comedy. And the result was cinematic gold. The unexpected chemistry between the two turned a silly brawl into an unforgettable scene, with Barker's deadpan delivery playing perfectly off Sandler's wild antics. It wasn't just a funny moment, it was a cultural clash that somehow clicked, showing that even the most unlikely pairings can produce comedy magic. If you thought that was funny, wait until Adam Sandler reveals what really happened behind the next scene. Why Happy's swing looks weird. Happy Gilmore's golf swing is one of the most memorable and bizarre moves in sports movie history. With its full-speed run-up, baseball-style slap, and complete disregard for golf fundamentals, it breaks every rule in the book. It's wild, it's loud, and somehow it works. But what most fans don't realize is that the now iconic swing wasn't crafted in a writer's room or designed by a golf pro. It actually came from Adam Sandler's real-life frustration on the golf course after shooting Billy Madison. Tired of slicing every shot, Sandler ran up to the ball in a moment of pure comedic rage, and to his shock, hit it dead straight. That throwaway experiment turned into a light. An image struck of a failed hockey player bringing his aggression and unorthodoxy to the game of golf. It was ridiculous enough to work, and hilarious enough to base an entire character around. The Happy Gilmore swing became the perfect physical expression of the character's complete lack of refinement and his raw, untamed energy. How they all knew it was funny right off the very first test shots. It had been central to the interactions between Happy and the snobbish world of country clubs and etiquette, not just a gimmick. But what fans will almost never notice, though, is that the swing looks different from scene to scene. Sometimes a little more crooked, other times just a little bit slower. That's because on the very first day of really practicing the swing for the film, Sandler decided to warm up by running, only to pull a groin muscle, not enough to stop the production, but painful enough later to mess with his movements for the rest of it. "I pretty much just limped through the whole movie," says Sandler. So, yeah, the swing was weird, but that limp was real. No injuries for Sandler, but he still played into the weirdness. It actually gives that even more character to the part, making Happy feel that touch more reckless and unpredictable. The crooked swing became part of the charm visual cue that Happy was never going to fit in with the norms of the traditional golfer. His run-up wasn't just funny, but chaotic and dangerous, making every shot seem like it could end in triumph or total disaster. In the end, that imperfect limping swing became a perfect metaphor for Happy Gilmore himself, flawed, furious, and strangely effective. What began as an indignant outcry on a golf course became transformed into one of the most recognizable and beloved idiosyncrasies in sports comedy. Shooter McGavin's background actor antics. Christopher McDonald's portrayal of Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore remains one of the great comedic villain performances of the 1990s. He brought just the right mix of smug arrogance, fake charm, and unearned confidence to create a character fans loved to hate. With his slicked-back hair and self-satisfied smirk, Shooter embodied the country club elitism that Happy was constantly crashing into, sometimes literally. McDonald played the role straight, never winking at the audience, which made his absurdity all the more believable. But while all eyes were on Shooter during his big moments, something much weirder was happening just over his shoulder. From one of the Shooter tournament scenes, you can glimpse this strange, weirdly repeating extra in the background doing distracting things. One of the scene's most prominent features is that he is copying Shooter's golf swing in exaggerated slow motion. Another scene has him making shadow puppets on the grass, and in what could possibly be construed as the funniest one, faintly reminiscent of that typical funny skydiver skit where a skydiver pretends to choke, but instead gets away with it. He is seen gagging on a hot dog with no response from anyone else around him. These are not merely one-off flubs or artsy choices. It's a whole darn series of them. Same guy repeatedly appearing, always just a few feet behind Shooter. Always in time for a weird move, just that little off-focus to blend in. If you are watching the film properly. There is honestly an even funnier version of the story behind these oddball happenings in the background. According to Sandler's commentary on the DVD, the extra had lost a bet with the assistant director during the first week of filming. His punishment? To distract everyone in every Shooter scene from then on, until someone noticed on the set. The running gag became an inner joke for the crew. Strangely enough, nobody called it out during production. Not the director, not the actors, not even the continuity person. Everything was shot. Fans certainly didn't find out about it until years later. It was only when Sandler, in the DVD commentary, made the offhanded remark that some keen-eyed individuals went back to see the same extra pulling strange stunts around the film. Such is one of those hidden layers that don't change the story but become immensely enjoyable once the audience knows about them. In the movie full of visual gags and slapstick, this silent revolt by an extra is the perfect meta-joke. It reminds the audience that once in a while, even during the tightest shots, chaos reigns, if you're paying just a little attention. It also proves some of the biggest laughs don't come from the stars, but from that guy choking on a hot dog in the background. Ben Stiller's cameo was 100% uncredited. One of the most unexpectedly hilarious parts of Happy Gilmore is the brief but unforgettable appearance of a twisted nursing home orderly with a fake smile, a thick mustache, and absolutely no regard for the elderly. He threatens grandmas, extorts families, and somehow does it all with a terrifying grin. If you've watched the film multiple times, you've probably recognized that voice and energy. Yes, that's Ben Stiller. But curiously, you won't find his name in the credits. His performance as Hal, the sadistic caretaker, was never formally acknowledged in the film's billing. And that was very much intentional. The Stiller role's origin is as strange and spontaneous as the character itself. Adam Sandler said Stiller was not meant to even be in the movie at all. He was simply dropping by the set to say hello. But somewhere in the joking and bantering between takes, he started improvising this over-the-top nursing home character. The voice, mustache idea, passive-aggressive threats. It was all Stiller, completely off the cuff. The cast and crew were laughing so hard, Sandler finally asked him to step in and actually play the part for a quick scene. What was supposed to be a throwaway gag suddenly became one of the most memorable roles in the entire movie. After doing one scene, the response was so great that they brought Hal back later in the movie, according to the writers. Stiller returned in ridiculous disguise and added even more unscripted lines. His character made a swing from fake nice to a full-on threat. It was rich comedic gold, all his invention. In fact, many of Hal's lines like, "You can trouble me for a warm glass of shut the hell up," weren't even in the script. He improvised those completions, and the cast had to fight hard not to break character mid-scene. According to Sandler, during a later conversation, it would be funnier if people were like, "Wait, was that Ben Stiller?" when it came to crediting the movie. So they planned to add Stiller's name to the credits, and then they had a change of heart. This became a long-running joke that has confused many first-timers even today. Over the years, this uncredited appearance has achieved a cult status of its own: the Subway sandwich prop disaster. One of the more bizarre and oddly specific running gags in Happy Gilmore is Happy's deep and genuine love for Subway sandwiches. It's such a prominent part of the film that most fans assume it was baked into the script from the start. But surprisingly, the entire Subway subplot wasn't planned at all. It came about midway through production when Subway approached the studio with a sponsorship offer. The production team saw it as an opportunity for some quick product placement and a little extra budget padding, and quickly got to work crafting a fake in-universe Subway commercial starring Happy himself. The result is the now iconic commercial sequence where Happy, mid-training montage, grins his way through a cheesy Subway endorsement. It's intentionally low-budget, hilariously upbeat, and somehow fits perfectly into the movie's chaotic tone. What fans might not know is just how fast it all came together. The entire commercial sequence, from scripting to shooting to editing, was completed in a whirlwind 48 hours to meet contractual deadlines. It was shot on location with real Subway sandwiches, real wrappers, and, as it turned out, very real consequences for using actual food as props under hot set lights. While the sandwiches might look very appetizing in the final cut, the story behind them is not so appetizing. After a couple of takes under the burning sun, those fresh subs turned out to be not so fresh anymore. The mayonnaise separated, the lettuce wilted, and a very distinct smell, which could only be described as catastrophic, wafted from the meats. Julie Bowen, who played Happy's love interest, Virginia, later described the stench as something between gym socks and roadkill in a bread boat. By the 7th or even 8th take, this turkey sandwich, used for most of the close-ups, had virtually turned into a biohazard. Worse still, or maybe funny, Adam Sandler started using the Rotten Club sandwich as a weapon off-camera. Members of the crew say he waved it like a weapon and chased away lingering extras or perhaps unsuspecting production assistants who wandered too close. Some even say that in the end, the sandwich went radioactive, sealed in a plastic bag, and buried far away from the set. It had its own chair, joked one grip many years later. You're not prepared for how insane the next behind-the-scenes detail really is. Even Adam couldn't believe it made the cut. Chubbs's fake hand was never right. Carl Weathers brought a unique blend of wisdom and slapstick to the role of Chubbs Peterson, the one-handed former golf pro who becomes Happy Gilmore's reluctant mentor. One of the film's most memorable gags is Chubbs's comically fake wooden hand, which he claims to have worn ever since an alligator bit off his real one. The prop itself became a running joke, stiff, awkward, and wildly exaggerated, but what most fans don't realize is just how inconsistent that hand really was from scene to scene. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. The wooden hand was deliberately made to appear very cheap, part of the gag that Chubbs was so proud, or broke, that he wouldn't purchase a better prosthesis. During the filming, at least 6 different versions of the hand were used, each slightly different from the other, and very often turned up in the wrong scene. For instance, one version was too small, another too shiny, while one had fingernails visible, yet another bent at the knuckles, which for a wooden prosthetic is just plain stupid. They used any hand and had no concern about whether they matched. Continuity was rapidly disposed of. "We never tried to keep any of them consistent," Sandler said. "We would just take whichever one was not broken that day. Half of them were cracked. One had dog bite marks, and we lost the good one halfway through the shoot." The hand had a reputation for being very fragile. It broke in half during several takes, got smashed indoors, and even melted a bit under bright lights. Eventually, it ended up being less of a headache and more of a good time for the crew, who would bet on whether anybody in the audience or even the director would notice. The gag itself went beyond the set. Carl Weathers purposely made the prop ridiculous by waving sometimes with the wrong hand to see if the editors were actually paying attention. In one instance, we can see Chubbs holding something casually in a wooden hand as if it functioned. The goof remained as the team decided to allow it to remain. After all, Happy Gilmore was never meant to be a polished movie. Rather, it was indeed supposed to be chaotic. The fight that was actually real. The golf course brawl between Happy Gilmore and Bob Barker is arguably the most unforgettable scene in the entire film. It's absurd, unexpected, and endlessly quotable. In fact, one of the most shocking punches in the scene was completely real, not part of the choreography, and not even planned. It turns out Bob Barker was more than just a TV icon. He was a surprisingly capable stunt performer. The production staff felt stunned by Barker at the age of 72 when he insisted on performing all his own fight sequences. It was believed that for most of the physical action, Barker would have to step aside and leave it to a double. However, eager to be a part of the real action was Barker, an avid martial artist who trained regularly in karate with Chuck Norris. His interest in doing his own stunts actually translated into an insistence. "I didn't want to double," Barker once said. "If I'm going to be in a fight, I want to throw the punches myself." Caught unawares by the enthusiasm of Barker, Sandler went along with it, but things became a little too realistic in one specific take. As Sandler was going to throw a fake punch, he turned it a bit too early to escape from the hit. Barker, believing that he was doing what was choreographed, went ahead to give what turned out to be a much harder punch. The shout from Sandler, "The hell was that?" was not the work of acting, for Sandler really had just been clocked by the legendary host of The Price is Right. The entire crew was left absolutely hanging. For a split second, nobody knew if they were going to be cutting the take or if there was going to be a break. But then, of course, Sandler came to realize what it was, and at that point, he burst into laughter. The whole thing was picked up on camera, and the take was so perfectly chaotic that they decided to go with it. And at that one spontaneous moment, transformed the fight into one of the most discussed scenes in comedy movie history. The golf ball that cost $20,000. In a movie filled with wild moments and physical comedy, one of the most impressive sequences in Happy Gilmore is a trick shot that feels almost too perfect to be real. The scene features Happy sinking an improbable putt after the ball ricochets off a construction tower, bounces into a moving cart, rolls down a slope, and miraculously drops into the hole. It has all the flair of CGI, but here's the twist: it wasn't digital at all. The production team insisted on doing it practically, and the result was one of the most expensive and frustrating moments of the entire shoot. Is it true that shooting such a shot takes 2 days to shoot? The crew had to set up ramps, guides, and carefully timed cues to determine the ball's path by itself, resetting the whole course whenever something went wrong, which was pretty often. Weather changes, a tiny piece of debris redirecting the ball, almost all that could go wrong did. After dozens of takes with no success, they finally got it right. The ball rolled precisely according to plan, the camera rolled as well, or so they thought. Right after celebrating, the team was happily going through footage only to realize that the camera jammed, and the perfect take turned out unusable. Not shirking, they reset and went for another take. This time again, the ball made it through the elaborate setup, but while the crew rushed in to mark the shot, it rolled away off a slight incline and disappeared down into some drain pipe nearby. That ball custom-painted prop, made to match the final scene's light and angles, was gone. And that wasn't just any golf ball. The current price for that ball is $20,000. It has been specially coated and finished to the visual tones of the scene, supposed to reflect just enough light without glaring on camera. It even had micro-detailing to match the continuity of earlier shots. There were only 2 of them made for filming. Losing one was no small setback. At the end of the show, Sandler got the last one remaining as a souvenir, and he's actually supposed to keep it in a glass display case with the larcenist inscription attached. Most expensive ball I never hit. Hockey Easter eggs everywhere. One of the core elements of Happy Gilmore's character is his identity as a failed hockey player trying to make it in the ultra-conservative world of professional golf. That contrast drives much of the film's humor, but what many fans don't realize is how deeply that hockey DNA is embedded into the film itself. Beyond the obvious references, like Happy wearing his Boston Bruins jersey or breaking into hockey-style brawls, there's a hidden layer of subtle nods and Easter eggs peppered throughout nearly every golf scene, and most viewers have never noticed them. Adam Sandler, along with members of the costume and prop departments, has stated that there is at least one hockey reference in every sequence involving golf, and some of these are so subtle as to be nearly invisible. Take, for instance, Happy's wardrobe. Many of the colors and numbers on his shirts reference famous hockey jerseys, At one point, he wears a green and yellow combination, which goes with the old Minnesota North Stars colors. At another point, the number on Happy's cap matches that of Ray Bourque's jersey, a nod in reverence to one of Sandler's childhood hockey idols. Happy's equipment is another tribute to his hockey background. His golfing glove is taped like a hockey stick and follows a rough cross-pattern wrap that would never be used by any self-respecting golf aficionado, yet it comes second nature to any hockey player. He holds his club with an extremely wide separation between his hands, resembling a slap shot setup rather than a proper golfer's stance. These weren't accidents. They were purposeful design choices made by Sandler and the creative team meant to convey the idea that Happy had never been off that rink for golfing, wherever he went. Shortly after the release of the film, a die-hard fan isolated what may have turned out to be a very surprising revelation. Super crazy sight of a tournament scoreboard in one of the scenes. And the fan found out that some players' scores perfectly coincided with the memory of a famous NHL player's stats goals, assists, or jersey numbers. Once the theory hit the online media, Sandler confirmed it during a Reddit AMA. Yeah, we snuck in a lot. That was our way to say, Happy never really left the ice. It was deservedly an inside joke, but filled with love for the sport. The putt that wasn't planned. The climax of Happy Gilmore is one of the most memorable endings in sports comedy history. Happy, bruised but determined, lines up a putt amid the wreckage of a collapsed tower, banking the ball off scaffolding, bouncing it through obstacles, and somehow sinking it to win the tournament. It's ridiculous, triumphant, and the perfect cap to a film built on chaos. But here's the twist. That final putt was never supposed to go in. In the original script, Happy misses the shot by inches, losing the tournament to Shooter McGavin, and learning a more humble lesson about failure and perseverance. Originally, the filmmakers intended the last ending to be grounded. Happy falls short, but he learns to lose and can see the bigger picture, reclaiming the house of his grandma and growing up. It was supposed to portray an anti-sports movie ending, tantalizing against the typical underdog wins-it-all finale. But when test audiences saw it, their reaction turned out to be overwhelmingly negative. They wanted him to win, and do it all in an outrageous way. So a few weeks after filming, wrapped cast and crew reunited to shoot a new ending. They pulled out all the stops in adding the big Rube Goldberg-style trick shot, ricochets, debris, and a slow-motion crowd cheer-all to give audiences precisely the kind of implausible, fist-pumping victory they craved. The new ending was so convincing that most fans never thought to question it. It just seemed to fit so naturally for a character like Happy, whose entire journey had been based on subverting people's expectations. But, however small, a glimmering hint perseveres in plain view of the original ending. When viewing the film in slow-mo, just before the ball is falling into the hole, one glimpse at the tournament scoreboard already shows one winner next to the name of Shooter McGavin. Either the evidence of the most subtle continuity error or a possible remnant of the original cut. In either case, leaves an intriguing window into a version of the film that might have been, where Happy received no miracle shot, and the emotional heft lay in his dignity in handling defeat. Before the credits rolled, though, there was one final layer of chaos that made Happy Gilmore more unforgettable than anyone expected. The chaos that made it a classic. Happy Gilmore isn't just a cult classic. It's a film that quietly redefined sports comedy by embracing total chaos, unfiltered silliness, and unexpected heart. Beneath its loud, slapstick exterior is a surprising amount of attention to detail. Every scene holds a little something extra, a background gag, a subtle callback, a physical mishap turned into a punchline. It's a movie that plays fast and loose with rules, but never without intention. Fans have watched it dozens of times, not just because it's funny, but because each rewatch reveals something they didn't notice before. The legacy of the film is not confined to mere plot or characterization, but involves the energy behind its conception. Adam Sandler and his guys took the production as a playground. Mistakes capture moments. Injuries like Sandler's groin pull or bruised ego from Bob Barker were incorporated into the storytelling. Extras created their gags. Oh, and that whole thing with the rotting sandwich. As Sandler later said, "We were just trying to make each other laugh." And it's that, the raw, spontaneous spirit, that renders the film permanently charming. The most stunning realization is how, on the surface, it appears chaotic, yet has an underlying intent with an unbelievable amount of craftsmanship underneath. Every hockey Easter egg, every mismatched prop, every improvised cameo helps to build a layered, lived-in world that gets funnier the more you look. The comedy of the whole film is in every detail down to the sporadically placed soundtrack, changing from rock anthems to soft piano at hilariously perfect moments. Happy Gilmore wants you to laugh at its loudest moments, but rewards those who are paying attention to its quieter ones. Over time, the film has gained a sort of reverent history. Phrases like, "The price is wrong" and "just tap it in" have become shorthand for an entire generation's sense of humor. Golfers continue to imitate Happy's swing. Fans still argue about improvised moments. Sandler gets many people telling him this movie is the reason they picked up a club or put one down. A comedy that never asked to be taken seriously, it stayed long enough to become iconic. If that made you see Happy Gilmore in a whole new way, don't forget to like the video, drop a comment with the funniest thing you never noticed, and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes breakdowns. And hey, don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen for more hidden gems from your favorite cult classics. You won't want to miss it.